Shining sand beaches, Bermuda shorts, international businesses. The images that come to mind when describing Bermuda. But what about the other side? The side where basic housing is unattainable, jobs are difficult to find, or pay wages that are insufficient to support a family. A Bermuda where children are growing up without a basic nutritional diet, sufficient education, and a safe and secure community protecting them from the deadly world of drugs, gangs, and violence. Poverty affects many segments of our society, young and old, black and white, male and female, all of whom deserve a voice.
When most people think of poverty in Bermuda, they think of the indigent, the homeless males that you often see in town. But there is a much larger and yet much more hidden population, more vulnerable population of mothers and children who are struggling, many of them homeless, and it is that constituency of people that we're focusing on in this film.
The struggles of mothers, while no more or less challenging than those of other members of the community, have multi-generational consequences due to the impact it has on their children.
It is important to address poverty with mothers and children because women are the nurturers, they are the teachers of the world, of their families. And so we can convince women that teaching their children that poverty is a circumstance, it is not a lifestyle. They have then taught their children and they then will teach their children. So we are moving from a situation into a different option of lifestyle, and they can then change their trajectory in life to say that this is what happened, this is not what has to be my end, just because it is my present.
Poverty is on the rise in Bermuda. In the 2000 census, 50% of black female-headed households with children were living at or below the poverty line. Today, this number is even higher. So how did we get here? And what is it like to be one of Bermuda's have-nots?
Here in Bermuda, that a lot of people assume because you're related to this person and you're related to that person, and your life can be as bad as you're making it seem. And sometimes it's 10 times worse.
We are at a boiling point for many families, and our children are growing up and creating their own Bermuda. One where they will make a week's wage in an hour working the streets. One where their family becomes the neighborhood gang. One where the motto increasingly has become kill or be killed. This is the price we pay. So how has life become so difficult for many Bermudians? For many, the cost of basic necessities, groceries, laundry, transportation, electricity, rent, has become impossible. This is poverty. And while Bermuda may not face absolute poverty, the kind suffered in more destitute nations of Africa and Asia, our relative poverty rates and the widening gap between the rich and the poor can no longer be denied.
We look at poverty, we use the statistician's definition from Timothy Smeating that the person is at the poverty level if they're earning less than half of the median income. The median in 2010 was $76,000. So if you are earning less than half of the median, you are poor. The Bermuda situation is different because you have to take in what they call the parity purchasing power, which means earning $50,000 here is not the same as earning $50,000 in the United States. I'd be much better off earning $50,000 in the US than I would be here because the purchasing power parity, which here it's quite low. Everything that comes in goes out. And so that's how the Bermudian economy is, that most of what you take in has to go back out. So we've always been one paycheck away, really, from poverty.
What has caused the cost of living to become so unaffordable and life to become so difficult on our island paradise? It is widely agreed that the biggest factor is the high cost of housing. The Bermudian home ownership rate at 51% is considerably low for developed nations, and rents have become unaffordable for many, creating a housing crisis that is unacceptable for an island of so much wealth.
I think to pay rent here is the biggest issue.
I make like $300 and something a week, but I don't get it until the end of the month. That adds up to $1,500, and my rent is $1,450.
And I'm also looking for an apartment, But the struggles with that is that I don't have the money up front to pay down on this apartment plus the month's rent, what people are looking for.
It was a good working rule of thumb that rental prices on the island were about $1,000 per bedroom per month. It varied depending on location and condition, but $1,000 per bedroom per month was a good way for somebody to think about what it was going to cost them to get a rental place here. And we were mostly dealing with expatriates at that point. That was in 1990.
The international sector overtook tourism as the major earner of foreign exchange. What happened then was that you changed the climate of the employee, you typed the DNA, if you will, of the employee. Prior to 1990, the guest workers that were brought in for the tourism industry were primarily single workers. You housed them in dormitories, so they didn't use up your infrastructure.
In 1991 and 1992, there was an enormous amount of activity of new companies arriving on the island. Most of the companies that we have all come to think of as the sort of big international companies on the island, Ace and Excel and Partnery and Centery and all of those, a lot of those companies or their beginnings were in 1991-92. It was a huge influx of business capital onto the island, mostly in reinsurance. By 1993, my working rule of thumb of $1,000 per bedroom per month had doubled. By that time, it was a fairly good guesstimate that you were going to be looking at $2,000 per bedroom per month, market-wide.
They can afford more in rent, and they were receiving subsidies from their employers, so they can pay far more than the Bermudian worker. And so that helped to cause the rental market to escalate tremendously after that, to the point where it became prohibitive.
The rents today is probably the most important part as far as how mothers or families are managing. I know years ago you used to pay like $700 for a one bedroom, and now you're paying anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000, $3,000. So technically you find yourself, and even though you do make a good wage, you find yourself making money or being paid just to be able to live. I'm finding it hard in Bermuda right now raising a family. One, because the inflation in prices, groceries alone.
$1,200 for rent, about $200 for groceries because it's 3 of us. On top of that, transportation, because my car has been off the road. I had to catch a taxi or a gypsy cab, and that adds up.
I have a lot of bills that I owe, and the way how I'm working and being paid, I can pay the rent, pay the lights, buy food.
I spend about $500 on groceries. And I have my own transportation, so I spend money for gas.
It's $8.50 for a big washer, and then it's 50 cents every 3 minutes for a dryer. But that's still not in my budget, so I have to wash clothes by hand.
If I don't have electricity, and many of these women do not have electricity because it's been turned off, I can't store fresh food in my refrigerator. I will have to buy pre-prepared food, which is much more expensive and most of the time not very healthy. And I can't buy in bulk, so I'm going to be buying small quantities of everything. So these sort of things add up and become a kind of a ball and chain in a way for someone who's poor.
I will be spending $150 for just 2 bags of groceries, which is ridiculous. Ridiculous.
I try to budget. I probably end up spending between $150 and $200. I think last week I spent $224, so I went over.
Part of the problem, of course, is obvious, and that is the high cost of vegetables and fruit and fresh food of any kind.
$6.
Mothers are forced to buy things that are less nutritious, very often high in fat and high in sugar. Those are the cheaper items.
One that one's special ain't even like having a special. This one's $5.09.
And of course, the ultimate result of all that is, obesity, and it does seem to be a contradiction there. How is it that these people can not have enough money to buy food, and yet many of them are obese? Well, it's a whole cycle. And the other aspect of that is what we call food anxiety. If you know where your next meal is coming from, you're not worried about it. But if you don't know, and if you pass by maybe 2 meals without any food, you begin to get worried about your next meal. And when you finally have the opportunity to eat, very often you overeat. And those kinds of patterns are, of course, lead directly toward obesity.
$6.95 for big oranges, which I cannot afford. But because my children love them, I have to get them. And it's a good part of the nutritional diet.
I feel like we're going over budget already.
At the Coalition, we have a food storehouse where families can come in to get groceries, and we've seen the demand go through the roof. Probably in the past year, we've had a tripling of mothers coming in seeking assistance. And they're coming in for a variety of reasons, primarily food aid, but also electricity bills. They often have letters of non-payment, meaning their electricity is going to be turned off, medical bills that have been referred to debt collectors, school uniforms, just a variety of things. And I think there's an assumption in the community that often these parents are irresponsible or lack sensible budgeting skills. We work quite closely with our clients on budgeting as part of our commitment to work therapeutically with them. But when you can't find a job or when your take-home pay is only $300 to $400, the best budgeting skills in the world can't cover rent, groceries, and all the other bills that these families face.
By the time they take over my insurance, pension, and payroll tax, that's my money right there going.
At the end of the day, once all the deductions and everything comes out, it doesn't send you home with much. And it's hard as a single parent to look at my paycheck every week and divide it up and say, okay, what am I going to pay? What am I not going to pay? Can I afford to sacrifice this? And then if I sacrifice this again, will I be able to catch up next week?
Electricity bills got neglected because it was a matter of eating, feeding your child, or paying the electricity bill.
And we just look around and we watch the rent go higher. Electricity and water and everything that you need, laundry, goes higher, you know, and it's just, everything's rising above us besides our wages.
Unable to make ends meet, Bermudians are getting desperate. More are facing eviction. And when Bermuda's own housing agency, the Bermuda Housing Corporation, is evicting families, where do they go?
When they gave me the eviction note, they just dropped it at my door. It was humiliating because they brought police, all sorts of people who didn't really need to be there. I mean, it was like I was a criminal, but I was a homeless person wanting somewhere to go. That is all it was.
I was called in to provide some emotional support for a client who was being evicted from her Bermuda government home. And in being evicted, when I arrived, there were a few bailiffs that were there. Our organization was there.
Go back across the street now. I'm not going to tell you no more. I don't care. I'm telling you right now. Go back, please.
There were several police officers. There were numerous housing association workers who were there. There was a hustle truck. We're talking about one family, no violence, no potential for violence when being evicted.
Nobody's still staying there.
How many months has it been?
It's been like 7 months. I mean, I am surviving. I am here. I am trying to make ends meet, but I'm still homeless.
Sure, this client had an enormous debt owed to Bermuda Housing. Are there ways that we can rectify these situations? Are there ways that we can handle it? Is it right that an innocent child who had no control, being the daughter, the granddaughter of this family, being homeless? Is there something we can do? Are we even ready to discuss that these evictions are taking place?
Gone are the days when the homeless numbered just a few walking the streets of Hamilton. More and more, entire families lack a stable place to call home.
I think it has gotten worse. All of the agencies have indicated that Bermuda's homeless problem has increased, especially once we saw the cost of housing go through the roof.
The landlord needed the apartment for his family member, so I had to move out, and I ended up homeless for a while.
I was living in Long Bay Beach in a tent.
I had to find places to sleep. Caves, bathrooms, parks, beaches, until I was 7 months pregnant.
While I was homeless, I paid off 3 bills. So it wasn't a matter of just lounging around with nowhere to go, just living it up.
I see a lot of homeless people, way more than I saw last year and way more than I saw the year before. And I wonder, just like violence and crime, what next year will bring for us.
The government has made efforts to respond to the housing crisis. In recent years, there have been government-sponsored housing developments, including Laughlin's, Perimeter Lane, and Harborview Village. For the middle class, this is a start, but does not sufficiently address the insurmountable housing crisis for families at the low to no income end of the spectrum. In 2007, government transformed a building on the old U.S. base into a dormitory-style complex to provide transitional housing in emergency cases. The building, called Gulfstream, is currently home to over 100 families, many of whom claim to have been forgotten.
This is my room at Gulfstream. There's 5 of us in one room. My whole family's in one little room. This is where me and my boyfriend sleep and the baby. My son and my daughter sleep on this side. This is just where I keep the microwave and storage, I guess. Now the toys, they can't play with it because they have no space.
Gulfstream rent is $540. People might say that's easy, but if you don't have a job to make good money, then you still can't pay the $540 and pay the cost of eating and clothing your children.
People have a tendency of putting us all into one category. Oh, well, they live down there. They're lower than us. We have houses. No, we're not. Everybody's down there from different circumstances. Maybe somebody's landlord put them out. Maybe somebody's trying to save. Maybe somebody's recovering from drugs. Maybe it's a single parent or trying to make it. There's different reasons that we're down there.
They say we're crabs in a bucket. That's what they classify us as on Gulfstream, or crabs in a bucket.
Okay, this is the bathroom I share with another individual. This is our storage space where we get to keep whatever we need. We all share one bathroom, so it's kind of hectic in the morning and at night.
There's 3 floors. On each floor, there's a kitchen, 3 stoves, and 2 sinks.
What I think should happen is that if you're in an emergency situation, you don't have anywhere to stay, you go to Gulfstream until something becomes available, and you will be the next tenant to be moved into that place, not other people coming